thematic Wario!
Hey, that meme's actually relevant here because y'all voted for him. As I've made my way down the list of Mario characters and analyzing them probably more than any other person in existence, there were a few characters that I was a bit wary of covering. Simply just because off the top of my head, I couldn't think of any real thesis or theme that could serve as a through line throughout like a 10 to 15 minute video. The characters that I've covered so far are longtime mainstays that have had a plethora of appearances throughout the franchise and have a fleshed out enough arc that I can realistically make a video out of. And it's why I haven't covered characters like Daisy or Waluigi because they're mostly known for their party game appearances, and haven't had nearly enough time to be real characters outside of that. But for some reason, there's a character that is somehow in the middle of this. Despite being part of the franchise for nearly 34 years, having a plethora of mainline game appearances, despite the pretty easy to grasp rivalry, I've never really known what to make of him. But you guys voted for him, and I'm nothing but a man of the people. So today we're going to be talking about the garlic munching, motorcycle driving, W hat wearing nemesis to Mario.
I'm a Wario. I'm gonna win.
Wario is a character that's been kind of neglected by Nintendo for a long time. While other characters like Peach and Donkey Kong have been getting new games of their own after not having one for well over a decade, Wario's most recent game is another installment of his infamous minigame series, which is nice, but is ignoring a huge part of the character's history. While he was originally designed to be a villain, and in a lot of ways still is, he had his own series of 2D and 3D platforming games spanning all the way back to the Game Boy, and continuing all the way through to the Wii, where his last solo game, Wario Land Shake It, was released on. It's really unfortunate to see because Wario was an entire franchise of his own. Between Mario, Donkey Kong, Yoshi, and Wario himself, he makes up an entire fourth of the Mario universe in my opinion. He has his own list of villains and side characters, unique areas and worlds that he alone visits, and his games are wildly different from the platforming style of any games from the other three. Now I could go on all day about how we would all love a new Wario World game to be released on the Switch too, and to finally give Waluigi a mainline game appearance. Y'all know me well enough to know that that's not going to be the main point of this video. Wario is a character with a history far more vast than I gave him credit for, and while on the surface he seems nothing more than a fat, funny, cartoonish rival for Mario, there's actually some deeper underlying stuff going on here. Themes of greed, obviously, but also bitterness and nature versus nurture, and I'm going to cover it all here today. Today we're going to be talking about the spiteful rival of the Mario franchise, Wario. Real quick before we begin, I know all of you are probably wondering if I'm still going to be making a review for the Mario Galaxy movie. And the answer is still absolutely yes. I've seen the movie and I've already begun writing a script for it. I wanted to give myself a bit of time to let the movie sink in and allow myself to really marinate on it before I started putting anything to paper. But it's on its way, I promise, and it should be out next week, so stay tuned for that.
Here I go.
When Wario was first conceived for the sake of Super Mario Land 2, he was specifically designed to be a more personal rival for Mario. While Bowser at the time was just a simple overarching evil ruler that was just a big bad for Mario to dip into lava to save the day, Nintendo wanted to lean into the idea of Mario having more of a nemesis. Inspired by Bluto from the old Popeye cartoons, Wario was meant to be a more cruel, twisted mirror for our favorite Italian plumber, in a similar vein to characters like Venom or Virgil, and as more games came out and he made more appearances, that narrative remained. Mario is kind-hearted, selfless, a good sport, and frequently puts others before himself, while Wario is cruel, selfish, frequently cheats, and seems to care more about treasure and money than anything else. This is common in a lot of stories, to be fair. Many stories will have one big overarching villain that in general represents everything that the hero isn't, and then there's a more personal rival character that's meant to highlight specific traits of the protagonist. This is what Wario's meant to be. He's greedy, dishonest, and a bully, everything that Mario isn't. On top of that, while he in general doesn't seem to get along with the rest of the Mario cast, even with people like Bowser, Wario seems to have beef with Mario specifically, and goes out of his way to try and sabotage him and his events. But is there a reason for this? What is it about Mario that's turned Wario into such a reverse Flash level hater for this guy? Well, we don't really know for sure. In typical Mario fashion, the origins for these guys are left pretty unclear. There's implications that Wario and Mario knew each other growing up, and as Mario became more famous for his heroic deeds in the Mushroom Kingdom and beyond, Wario became jealous of Mario, and that jealousy just turned into hatred. Spin-off comics and manga encourage this narrative as well, specifically the old Nintendo Power comics. They also imply a romantic rivalry between the two, since in those comics Wario has a crush on Peach and tries to impress her and steal her away from Mario, which, given the character he was inspired by, checks out. Even if you don't want to count all of this spin-off stuff as actual canon, there's enough of this narrative in all of this supplementary material that indicates that at least at one point the writers did have this origin story in mind, that at one point Mario and Wario knew each other growing up, and as they got older and Mario became a renowned hero, Wario got jealous of his fame and thus was born their rivalry. There's an attempt in some of these appearances of Mario and Wario's rivalry, and just in Wario stories in general, to imply a theme of nature versus nurture, asking the question of, are these two the way they are because of their inherent nature, or because of their upbringing? I mentioned in my Yoshi video that it's possible that the selfless actions of the Yoshi species could have left a permanent impact on the still developing baby Mario and had encouraged his drive to do good in the world. But on the flip side, if we look at Wario's appearance in Yoshi's Island DS, the dude gets left in the middle of nowhere. He's kidnapped from what we can assume is his home at the beginning of the game, and by the end lands on what I think is either an island or a tower on top of one of Bowser's many stashes of treasure and gets obsessed with it. Game Theory actually touched on this in one of their videos talking about Mario, and to be honest, it's probably their best Mario lore video to date in my opinion. The implication here is that Wario never got back to where he came from and grew up in an environment that fueled what might have been a childish level of greed into a lifelong obsession that follows him into his adult life. But that begs the question, is this moment merely an influence of his already greedy mind, or is it the moment that begins his corruption into a self-centered sore loser? The Nintendo Power comics seem to encourage the latter from my research. What with the hilariously goofy origin story of him and Mario playing cops and robbers as kids, and Wario only getting to play cops once. But given that Wario's initial design, even down to his name, was meant to be a mean and twisted mirror for the heroic Mario, there's arguments to suggest both ways. There is good in him though. Multiple times we've seen him go out of his way to help others, either to save Princess Peach in Mario 64 DS or Queen Merelda, I believe that's how you say it, in Wario Land Shake It. However, the reason he ends up in these situations is normally not out of the goodness of his own heart, which puts him more into the bracket of an anti-hero rather than just a straight-up hero or villain. Well, sure, you could argue that he agreed to help Mario and crew save Peach because he just wanted an excuse to see and save Peach and one-up Mario. There's also an argument to be made that he was just in it for the cake or money. And Queen Merelda, he just straight up throws out the window so he can get to the bottomless coin sack. While he does, many times throughout the games, perform noble heroic acts, they're normally either for fame or for money or both, which could further the nature side of that argument. Nowadays, Wario is more or less reduced to a side character in party games, being portrayed as a comedic, scheming duo along with Waluigi, which, don't get me wrong, I like and enjoy that dynamic. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't really had a chance to be a real character and lead his own game again, while other long-lasting characters like DK and Peach got one within a year of each other. I mean, heck, Yoshi's getting a new game this year too. Nintendo's been making efforts to give individual characters that may have been neglected for a long time chances to stand on their own 2 feet again. And out of the 7 Star Children, it feels like his corner of the universe has been the most unexplored in recent years outside of, again, the WarioWare series. He's not even in the Mario Galaxy movie. I still stand by the fact that he and Waluigi should have been the villains. Maybe they're saving them for the 3rd movie, I don't know. Regardless of if his greedy nature was biological or developed externally, there is a role that he serves in the wider Mario universe besides just being a one-note rival. I know I talk about these characters like they're from Shakespeare or something, but at the end of the day, these are characters designed for children. The Mario franchise, in general, has a general audience of mostly kids. Kids who are still learning a lot about the world. And a lot of these characters represent a vital lesson that still developing children can understand and take with them into the real world. Mario represents heroism, kindness, and encourages exploration. Luigi represents courage and showcasing bravery even when you're scared. Peach represents empathy, understanding, and love. Yoshi, as we talked about in my dedicated video about him, represents showing kindness and selfless regardless of reward, and regardless of what the outside world says about showing kindness as a weakness. And Wario, well, he represents the opposite, and they frame that as a bad thing. His muscles, his fat, cruel nature are over-exaggerated and cartoonish, like many of the characters in this series. He's all the things that kids are warned not to be. Greedy, selfish, a bully, spiteful, bitter, a cheater, etc. Think about it, in all of the Mario Sports opening cutscenes, it shows Wario, either with or without Waluigi, trying to cheat or trying to compromise the competition in general, and they get their comeuppance in usually comedic ways. Even in his own games where he's the protagonist and defeats evil beings for selfish intentions, karma always comes back around for him, like how the previously mentioned bottomless coin stack is stolen from him at the end of Wario Land Shake It. He's funny and cartoonish enough so that he can be the face of his own franchise and has hints of redeemable qualities, while also being antagonistic enough to teach kids lessons that this kind of behavior only leads to destruction. He's a cautionary tale while also being someone that's fun to watch and play, which, when you put it like that, makes him a pretty definitive anti-hero, huh? Wario, the brutish antithesis to Mario that cares only for money, revenge, and fame, not only serves as a brilliant and entertaining foil to the righteous Mario, but also acts as a subtle warning to kids as to not chase surface-level, material things like money and revenge. While occasionally fighting on the side of good, he normally never does it out of the goodness for the people, it's usually for his own self-pleasure. He's a character that poses questions about bad nature, and if it's something you're born with or something developed through your surroundings, and depending on your answer, that either makes him a lot more or a lot less sympathetic. But considering he regularly tries to sabotage sports events willingly, I don't think that last bit excuses his actions. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys voted for him, and hopefully I delivered. I've been wanting to make a Wario video for a while, but I'll be honest, I could never really figure out how to make a full video about him. A running theme with a lot of these characters I've started to notice, but with that poll, I was forced to kind of figure it out, and honestly, I really liked what I found. I think Wario, out of all the Mario characters I've talked about, is the most straightforward in terms of his themes and what he represents in the wider franchise, but that doesn't mean I couldn't turn that into an entire essay. Just one character left before I've done a video on all of the Star Children, but I've decided I should wait a bit before I either play Bonanza or watch the game in its completion before I make anything about DK, because it's basically a reintroduction of the character to modern audiences, so I want to have that in mind before I made anything about him. To be honest, it might be a while, cause it'd either be me playing it on someone else's Switch or watching gameplay of it, cause God knows I'm not getting a Switch 2, screw that noise. Anyways, like I said at the top of the video, Mario Galaxy movie review coming next week, and if you enjoyed what you saw here today, consider sticking around. I make video essays on mostly Mario, but I do a bunch of other stuff like anime and sometimes other video game franchises like Sonic, so if that's the sort of thing that you enjoy, like these short little 10-minute video essays and stuff about, all sorts, basically whatever I feel like. I talk about whatever I feel like on here. So if you enjoy just the ramblings of a man who just really likes media, consider sticking around. With that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.